This is Inside Indiana Business Radio for the afternoon of Tuesday, May 14th, 2024. I'm Kate Sharon. West Lafayette-based Inotiv Incorporated is delaying its fiscal second quarter earnings report due to negotiations between the company and the U.S. Department of Justice. The pharmaceutical testing company says the move is related to an investigation that included the execution of a search and seizure warrant at the company's former facility in Cumberland, Virginia. The earnings report, which was scheduled to be delivered on Friday, will now be released on Wednesday. In 2022, Inotiv reached a settlement with the DOJ and the U.S. Department of Agriculture following a lawsuit that was filed over an investigation into the Virginia dog breeding facility operated by Inotiv's Indianapolis-based subsidiary, Envigo RMS. Inspections of the facility found record-keeping issues related to the mortality of dogs, as well as live dogs housed in filthy conditions that had received inadequate medical care and insufficient food. Through organic growth and strategic mergers and acquisitions, Evansville-based Shoe Carnival Incorporated anticipates exceeding 500 stores and becoming a multi-billion-dollar retailer by 2028. But Steve Alexander, Vice President of Investor Relations and Financial Planning, says the company is also focusing on expanding its e-commerce presence.
We view it as omni-channel. You're going to have customers that brick and mortar, yes. Then you're going to have customers that are e-commerce, yes, and that's what they do. But I think you have a lot of consumers that do both. I think you have customers that use e-com for research and product assortment and selection. But then depending on the nature of the purchase, they may go into the store.
In February, the 46-year-old company reached a record high of 429 stores and expanded into its 36th state by acquiring Wisconsin-based Rogan Shoes. Alexander said the company expects to grow net sales in the 2024 fiscal year by 4 to 6% over the last year. Michigan City-based Horizon Bank Corp. has tapped John R. Stewart to serve as the bank's next executive vice president and chief financial officer. Stewart most recently served as deputy CFO for First Interstate Bank System, Incorporated in Billings, Montana. In addition to his financial services experience, Horizon said in a news release Monday that Stewart also brings experience in strategic planning, corporate development, and investor relations to the bank's leadership team. Stewart will succeed Mark Secor, who has served as CFO for the past 16 years and will transition to the new role of Chief Administration Officer. During his time as CFO, Horizon said Secor helped the bank grow from $893 million in assets to $7.8 billion and successfully integrated 12 mergers. From the number one source for Indiana business news, this is Inside Indiana Business Radio.
Indiana, your bold future starts here. IBJ Media, Inside Indiana Business, and the Indiana Economic Development Corporation invite you to the Engage Indiana series, presented by CareSource, Indiana University, and Old National Bank. With an unrelenting focus on growing Indiana's economy, our Engage Indiana events take place in every region of the state. Discover when we'll be in your area at ibj.com/engage.
A biomedical researcher and entrepreneur whose innovations have helped improve treatment for people with musculoskeletal disorders has been named the first executive director of the Convergent Bioscience and Technology Institute at Indiana University, Indianapolis. Chia-Ying James Lin will serve as professor of biomedical engineering in the Luddy School of Informatics, Computing, and Engineering, according to an IU news release. Now a research professor at the University of Cincinnati, he will assume his new role with IU on August 26th. The Convergent Bioscience and Technology Institute aims to drive bioscience technology research in pursuit of discoveries such as wearable and implantable medical devices and sensors and AI-enabled drug discovery and delivery. The institute will collaborate with researchers at the IU School of Medicine and with industry partners such as the Indiana Biosciences Research Institute and BioCrossroads. Mayor Joe Hogsett's plan to create an additional professional sports development area in downtown Indianapolis was introduced to the City County Council on Monday, with 2 additional council sponsors and questions over the committee assignment for the proposal. IIB's Alex Brown has more.
The proposed taxing district is part of Hogsett's attempt to create a funding mechanism to support an undisclosed ownership group's application for a Major League Soccer expansion team in Indianapolis. The measure calls for the approval of a map that specifies more than 120 non-contiguous addresses throughout the downtown area that would be incorporated into the PSDA, which would provide funding for a soccer stadium to be developed on land adjacent to the downtown heliport. In December, the council, by a 23-1 vote, approved a different different PSDA at the former Diamond Chain site on the west side of downtown to support a proposed soccer stadium development by the owners of the Indy 11 soccer team. That project is already under development by Indianapolis-based Keystone Group, whose owner, Ursal Ozdemir, also co-owns the Indy 11, which plays in the second-tier USL Championship League. The mayor's plan, if successful, would essentially doom the Indy 11 stadium project and the team's goal of eventually playing in the MLS, because the state has authorized approval of only one PSDA application. When the previous PSDA plan was approved by the City County Council, the proposal first was heard by the Metropolitan and Economic Development Committee. In a written statement issued before Monday's council meeting, Keystone Group called Council President Vop Osili's decision to assign the proposal to the Rules and Public Policy Committee a, quote, unprecedented decision to deny the City County Council's Metropolitan and Economic Development Committee an opportunity to fairly judge the tax district proposal. Alex Brown, Inside Indiana Business Radio.
One of the lead attorneys in a class action antitrust lawsuit against the NCAA said Monday that settlement talks are progressing as a deadline looms next week for the Indianapolis-based organization and major conferences to agree to a deal that would cost billions in damages and set up a groundbreaking revenue-sharing system with college athletes. The settlement being considered would have the NCAA paying about $2.9 billion in damages. Schools in the Atlantic Coast Conference, Big Ten, Big 12, and Southeastern Conference would agree to commit about $300 million each over 10 years, most of which would be redirected to current athletes. NCAA President Charlie Baker said Monday a settlement could change the conversation with federal lawmakers about athlete compensation. 14 historic preservation projects around the state are slated to receive thousands of dollars in federal grants, state officials announced earlier this month. The funding comes from the U.S. Department of the Interior's National Park Service Historic Preservation Fund program, which is administered by the Indiana Department of Natural Resources Division of Historic Preservation and Archaeology. The HPF grant awards total more than $635,000. Applicants will match those grants with an additional $604,000 for a total investment of more than $1.2 million towards Indiana's historic and cultural resources. Indiana Secretary of Commerce David Rosenberg is this week's guest on the Business and Beyond podcast with Gary Dick, presented by PNC, a weekly conversation with high-profile Hoosiers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond, available now from your favorite podcast provider. I'm Kate Sharon for Inside Indiana Business, Radio on Demand.